Hi, I'm Sam Wilson with Wilson Custom Knives, and I'm here to talk to you today about a knife I've made, the Model 1. Now, I've already done some videos, some real-world testing, and some hard use of the knife, specifically addressing the fact that it is a hollow handle knife. I think we've addressed those concerns sufficiently as far as the strength of it, so I'm not going to get into that so much today. What we're going to focus on today is some real-world use of the knife in situations where you might actually find yourself, whether it be in the wilderness, backpacking, camping, hiking, survival, whatever the case may be. We're going to go ahead and set the camera up, and we're going to do a few things like some light chopping, making feather sticks, building a fire with the included fire kit, that sort of thing, to kind of give you an idea of the real-world capabilities of the knife and what its benefits are and the different features I've built into the knife. Okay, first up, we're going to go ahead and just do some chopping. Nothing big, and I don't have a ton of hardwood around here, so this is just whatever I found. Just like for the feather sticks, I didn't grab any wood in particular, just got what was laying around. So we're going to go ahead and chop on this a little bit just to give you an idea of what the blade can do. It is a large knife, so chopping should be something that it does pretty well. I didn't design it to be a great chopper or to be designed exclusively for chopping, but again, I think it will do it just fine. Try and take it a little easier. I don't want to break the board or the really want to chop it. So. But I mean, obviously, that's presenting no challenge at all. Now, there are a lot of different ways to do feather sticks. Everybody's got their preference to how they like to do it. I typically prefer, instead of pushing straight down, to hold the knife and draw the wood across it. But we'll go ahead and do both ways just so you can kind of get an idea of what it does. Again, you know, this may not be the strong suit for a knife this large, but with a full flat grind and a nice thin edge on there, it's going to do just fine, I think, and produce, obviously, curls that would easily go into the fire. One of the things I wanted to mention too was, you see me choked up on the knife either like this or like this, and have this choil here, this choil area, and the purpose of that is to allow you to choke up. So you can get your hand up there, get a little more detailed work, and put your thumb right behind the driving force of the edge, wherever you want it. So you can do a little finer work, have a little bit more control. Some folks may not like choils, and I understand that, but that's the way I designed this particular knife, and I find it very effective. You know, when you have a guard, that can sometimes limit your control, but a guard for a knife this large is, or at least of this design, is almost necessary. So I'll put the choil in there, that way you can really choke up on it, and we smoothed all the edges of the guard and of the choil here all the way around, so nothing digs in or burns. A very comfortable knife to use in that configuration. But again, everybody's got their own personal preference when it comes to this. To me, this is almost a foolproof way of doing it. Just hold the blade at the right angle, and it almost does it automatically for you. And again here, I didn't really pick the greatest piece of wood for this, but it just goes to show that just about any piece of wood will do. Obviously, certain woods excel and burn better and shave better and curl better, but just about any of it will do. That's the problem here in the Pacific Northwest. I live in the Portland area, and everything is wet. You saw that wood that I was chopping earlier. Things are just like mush here on the ground. Sometimes there's just nothing you can get that's off the ground, and everything is just, especially during the rainy season, is just mushy. In one of my other videos I did, you can actually see me as I'm working on a log. You see the log disintegrate underneath me because it's just so mushy and waterlogged. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more of this off camera, just so you have to watch the whole thing, and then we'll get ready for a fire. But that's, you know, a big knife, yes, but really what more do you need than that as far as curls? If it'll do that, then I think you're good to go. Now, one of the advantages of living in the Pacific Northwest here is there are a lot of downed old trees, and they're huge. So finding a big piece of bark like this really isn't that much of a problem, usually, even year-round. What you want to do next to keep your tinder dry is get you a nice big piece of bark like this, if you can, to serve as a platform. Kind of lay that flat. And now, go ahead and take your curls. You want to get a handful of those out there. You don't have to put them all out just yet, just make sure they're handy, because once the fire does start, you're going to want them ready to go. Now, another thing I liked about this sheath, or what I designed in this sheath, as I find handy, is oftentimes in the woods you find yourself kneeling down or squatting down a lot, whether you're sitting or working in front of a little makeshift workstation like this or something like that. So by having the sheath swivel on a D-ring, it's very easy to pull it out. You don't have to struggle with it stabbing into your ribs. You have it right there in a straight line, and it comes right back. But go ahead, and let's say, you know, this isn't even super dry here, but I think it'll burn just fine. If you have trouble finding even tinder that dry, and all you have is the fire starting equipment available in your knife, which is a small ferro rod in this case, let's go ahead and open it up and take a look. Pull it out. Cap over there. Now what I did was I made this little pouch out of waxed linen or canvas, depending on which batch I was doing. Take a compass. All I've got in here today is a compass and the ferro rod. We'll take the compass and we'll put it in our pocket so we don't lose it. We're not going to need it for right now. Now you take the ferro rod, and that's obviously go over there. Now if you don't have any tinder, you need to make some emergency tinder. This here is coated in wax, and what that does is it makes it fairly flammable anyway. So now go ahead and take and just cut yourself off a piece. Now you can see this is kind of difficult. This is a case where you'd prefer maybe a smaller knife than something this big to do a task like this. So we're going to go ahead and just put this here for the moment. Now if you look inside the sheath, there are little pockets. And I'll explain this later in the pictorial, but you take and grab this, and you get yourself a little PSK knife there. Now this is ideally suited for this type of work. Go ahead and just cut yourself off a strip of this here. You don't need much. Now you're going to take and
lightly try and rough that up a little bit. Now obviously this... Okay, sorry. Battery died. But go ahead and you can see you want to go ahead and fan those ends out a little bit. Try and put this... It's going to be difficult working this on a log, but this is what you'd have to work with in the real world, so we're going to go and try and do it. Now these small ferro rods are not as easy to use as the large ones. Obviously they're a little bit, they're smaller, a little bit more finicky as far as throwing huge amounts of spark and harder to control. But again, it's better than 4 or 5 matches inside there, 10 matches, whatever you could put. And there you go. Now take this, put it in there. And there you go. You've got fire. Wanted to go ahead and do this again real quick with the ferro rod and this material here. To be honest, I couldn't believe it started that easy. Even in my tests back in the shop, it did not start that easy, so I want to just go ahead and do it again so you can see that it does work. Although I can't imagine anybody doubting that waxed linen or whatever type of fabric, I don't recall exactly at the moment, was that I used. I can't imagine anyone actually doubting that that would be flammable, but that just lit up so easy, I couldn't believe it myself. So we're going to go ahead and do this again real quick. And undoubtedly it probably won't even start this time. That's just the way things go when you're out here in the woods or trying to get something on camera, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway and just see what happens. Yeah, that ought to be about right. And again, this is one of the advantages of having a smaller knife like this. To be honest, I would find, as much as I love big knives, I would find it rather unwieldy to try and do this and then also strike the ferro rod with that large knife, especially being as sharp as it is. I find that kind of dangerous personally. I just don't like the idea of getting cut or moving a big knife around that much in the woods when things can go wrong and emergency help can be a ways away. So let's see how this does again. There we go. And a strip this long will burn like that for about a minute and a half. My tests in the shop. So out in the woods you've probably got about 60 seconds or so. But that's more than enough time if you've got your curls handy, your shavings, to go ahead and take those and get those ignited. And the main reason I wanted to do this was these little ferro rods, they work really good for their intended purpose. But if they're going to be your primary fire starter due to emergency or whatever has happened that you're now having to use this on a regular basis, you can burn through them pretty quickly. They're not real thick, and you can burn through them pretty quickly if you're trying to start multiple fires every day with just using curls or whatever, wood shavings, wood dust. So by having this tinder built into the package there, it gives you something that'll usually take within a couple of strikes of the ferro rod and get things going. That gives you flame for a good solid minute. You can get even lightly damp tinder. You can ignite with that right there. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Hope that was able to explain some things about the knife, show why I did some of the things I did. I know a lot of people are really fond of having the compass in the butt cap of the hollow handle knife. I chose not to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you ever use the butt cap to pound on things, whether it's an emergency or just around camp, I typically use the butt of my knife to drive in pegs for my hammock. If you got a compass in there, there's a good chance sooner or later you're going to damage it, and that's a very critical piece of equipment. It can be very sensitive, so you don't really want to use it in that type of application. Additionally, I found that space was useful for solving a problem that I face more regularly when using a small ferro rod like that. As you saw, it made a very convenient handle to hold on to the ferro rod. And then again, simple things, and I'll discuss these in a later video, but not having the sharpening stone on the front of the sheath. In the past I've had knives that have that, and it just tends to get caught on things. So by having it in a small pocket in the back of the sheath, much like the PSK knife or personal survival kit knife as they've come to be known, I find it very handy. It's out of the way. There's something you don't really need. It's held in by the same magnetic retention system that holds in the large knife. A neat thing about that retention system is when you're wearing the knife on your belt like this, if you want access to the PSK knife, all you have to do is pull this up about half the way and the magnets hold it in place. Then you can reach down and grab the cord, and out comes the PSK knife, and you're done. You're ready to go. So again, hope this was helpful, and hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it wasn't too long. I know I have a tendency to talk a little too much, so we'll do another one explaining some of these features, maybe where it's a little more hospitable. Thank you.